Now it's your turn. We're back with radio host Neil Boortz, a defender of the fair tax. First, a question from my Facebook page. You've said that this will kill lobbyist jobs, which would be a good thing.
Break my heart.
But if the same amount of money flows into D.C., how do you conclude that the fair tax would do that?
Well, because the fair tax has no exclusions. There's no, first of all, businesses don't pay federal taxes. So why do businesses need to go to Washington and hire lobbyists to get them out of paying federal taxes? They don't pay them anyway.
Well, so they could sell more product if they could get an exemption at the retail level for their important, nationally needed stuff.
Well, that is the essence of the fair tax. There are no exemptions. That's why the prebate is in there. And of course, passage of the fair tax doesn't mean that the citizens can drop their guard and let the politicians do anything that they please. The only group in this country that really, in my mind, opposes it, two groups, politicians and lobbyists, because it does reduce their power massively.
Well, maybe some people here oppose it or like it. Let's hear from you. Go ahead. Who wants to be first?
I don't know if this is a question directly for Bob, but one thing I'd like to point out
Neil,
about
actually.
Or Neil, I'm sorry.
Bob's my accountant.
Maybe this will go to Bob. Is that there's often a sort of like class vindictiveness component that's used to justify the current graduated income tax. We often hear that, well, we're just going to tax people making over $200,000 a year. But most people don't realize that the current bracketing system was designed in the late 60s when $40,000 was equivalent to $200,000 due to inflation if you roll it back. So right now, it's like what started out as just a tax for the wealthy becomes a tax for almost everyone.
The fair tax would only grow if you bought more stuff. Well, like, if the inflation, it would grow.
Well, it only grows if the government starts to increase its spending and needs a bigger share of the economy than it's taking right now. But the gentleman is exactly right about the class warfare aspects of the graduated income tax. There is a reason, my friend, why it was number 2 on the list of things that had to be done in that little document by Marx and Engels.
And that reason is?
Because a graduated tax system, as we have, progressive income tax, is necessary to foment the class hatred that is necessary to build that totalitarian society they were after.
Who's next?
So far, we've been focusing on the more economic consequences of taxation, and my question was more on the moral aspects of the act of taxation. What's your view on government initiating force or threatening to use force by taking your money and then using that money?
Well, I hear it's a voluntary tax system. It's not forced.
Well, taxes by definition can't be voluntary.
And if you don't pay, men with guns will come to your house and make you pay.
I mean, my argument is the government claims to protect your rights, but it has to violate your rights to take your money, which is kind of a silly argument if you think about it, really. So,
Well,
what's your moral take on taxation?
The government is force. Government has one asset that nobody in this room has. Government can establish a goal and then use deadly force to achieve that goal. None of us can do that. And because of that unique power of government, we have to be responsible citizens and hold it in check. And the fair tax would do that.
Mr. Boortz, what's the difference between the fair tax and the flat tax? I've had the understanding that a fair tax potentially leads to the same slippery slope we're in now, where they can keep re-upping it and changing it, whereas if a flat tax is a set amount based on your income, then everybody's paying the same percentage no matter how much they make.
Well, essentially, we tried a flat tax in 1986. There were 3 different flat levels, but they got rid of a lot of our tax deductions, everything basically except the home mortgage interest deduction.
This was under Reagan.
Under Reagan, and it's been amended 11,000 times. There's your flat tax. If we do another flat tax, the lobbyists will be out in force. First of all, the corporate taxes stay there. So we still have the tax burden on business. But the lobbyists are out in force. I need an exemption for this industry. I need a break for that industry. The fair tax treats all businesses alike. No tax. And it treats all consumers alike as well.
Well, you can learn more about it from his book, which he holds like it comforts you.
It's my pacifier.
Thank you, Neil Boortz. the hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax. That's said to be a quote from Albert Einstein, and when he was alive, the forms were much simpler than they are now. These are my taxes for this year. Just think about the time my accountant and I waste preparing this. Think about the time you waste. How much time? It's hard to measure that exactly because of the extra time we spend bundling receipts and so forth. But consider just the cost. Those of us who pay others to do our taxes spend more on that than the Fortune 500's 5 biggest employers pay all their workers. In other words, what we spend on tax paperwork is greater than the pay of every worker at Walmart, United Parcel Service, and McDonald's, and IBM, and Citigroup. All those places combined. General Electric recently filed a tax form that droned on for 24,000 pages. What a waste of creative energy and time. And what an awful intrusion when government funded itself on user fees that didn't violate our privacy by demanding to know how much money we made and how many dependents we had. But then we got the income tax. Okay, then it was just four simple pages. No big deal. That's no big threat. Didn't even take much money. Just 1% from millionaires. Now people who make half that pay 50% once you include state taxes. But leave aside for now the amount. The complexity is just as evil. The 1040 form has gone from those 4 pages to these 176 pages, if you include the instructions. 4 million words, almost. After all those congressmen had to give those special deals to their contributors. No ordinary human can understand this. Oh, but don't worry, the IRS is ready to help you. Its website lists 1,900 publications, forms, and helpful instructions. The operators at the IRS help centers are also waiting to guide you. Sometimes they even answer the phone. The IRS admits that a third of the time they don't. When they do answer, they don't necessarily give you the right information. The IRS admits their own help centers give wrong answers much of the time. Though I shouldn't blame them. Congress created this. I mean, this is insane. How dare a government that supposedly serves the people impose on us this way? Politicians who create such laws aren't our representatives, they're our rulers. This is a scam. They increase taxes and their complexity, and then they demand we pay them homage. If we do, maybe they'll give us exemptions for little pieces of our lives. Let's call the whole thing off. Scrap today's income tax. Let's scrap it for the system the founders had. That was user fees and tariffs. Okay, it's not going to happen. But how about scrapping the income tax for the fair tax? Or scrap it for a flat income tax with no deductions. A flat tax of just 17% might raise just as much revenue on a one-page form. Wouldn't that be nice? Or at least give us taxpayers a choice. We can fill out the simple tax or the confusing one. I know which one I'd pick. Now, there's always a risk in proposing a replacement for the income tax. We could end up with 2 taxes. Congress might say, a national sales tax will substitute for the income tax, and then later say, oh, sorry, there's not enough money, we need to keep the income tax too. It's a danger. I wouldn't put it past the greedy politicians. But fear of that shouldn't stop us from trying an alternative. Let's not take our eye off the ball. The current system is an assault on our time and our freedom. We should have lower and simple taxes. We've been abused long enough. That's our program for tonight. See you next week.